Thank you, Professor,
Yeah.
for introducing this book to us, and on a very, very important topic. And as you have underlined, that both Turkey and China are, when it comes to geoeconomics, how important these two countries are. And there are a number of, I think, I'm sure you have, you know, uh, evoked a number of questions you would from the audience. May I now request uh, uh, the anybody from the audience, if they have any questions, either you can kind of raise your hand or write in the chat box, or maybe I can request Ambassador Sanjay Singh, sir, if you have any question or comments, given that you have also served in the region. So if you have any comments, sir.
Thank you, Mudassir, and thank you, Professor, for this wide-ranging talk. It's always going to be very interesting to hear about Turkey and China, and no one session can do it justice. So let me not take too much time. I'll just ask you a very question as to, you've already talked about Central Asia factor in the relationship to some extent. Could you expand this to cover the Iran-Pakistan factor in Turkey-China relationship? And could you also, just a small question as to what do you were talking about the Uyghurs, what about the Uyghurs fighters who are in Idlib? What would Turkey plan to do with them in the future?
Thank you, ambassadors, for your questions. So these are very interesting. Of course, there are different dynamics and different actors when we talk about the Turkey-China relations. We need to focus on, first of all, the United States from the beginning, and also some other global and regional players. When we talk about the Sino-Turkish cooperation in Central Asia, we need to talk about Russia also. Russia is a very dominant player there. But when we look at the Belt Road Initiative in Central Asia or Eurasia in general, we can see more competition rather than cooperation between Turkey and China, and between Russia and China. Because China is very competitive economically, so competing with China is very difficult. Before Chinese investments there were Turkish constructors and Turkish manufacturers. So when China is in Central Asia, Turkish business people are out. So this is a trouble for Turkey, and this is trouble for Russia also. Russian economic influence and even the Russian political influence in Central Asia is diminishing. And there we can see that there is some soft balancing against China by Russia and Turkey, because when we look at the characteristics of economies of Turkey and Russia, they are compatible. So they can cooperate and they can benefit. So Russia is an energy-rich country and also having some technological advantage for defense industry. Turkey has an advantage for manufacturing industry and also food sector and others, and also construction. So they can cooperate. So then after the dissolution of the Soviet Union, we can see deepening Turkish-Russian economic partnership in that regard. But the expectation on China worked opposite side, and we cannot say that there is a desired level of cooperation. So in that matter, yeah, Turkey is interested in developing infrastructure of Central Asia and Caspian countries to connect, to increase the connection between Turkey and China. But on the other, there is a concern because the increasing Chinese economic entity or influence in the region means the diminishing Turkish economic influence. So both Beijing and Ankara need to tackle this issue. And in that matter, there is a more cooperation in recent years between Ankara and Moscow against Chinese increasing economic influence. When we look at Pakistan and Iran, Iran, of course, is very big economic partner for Turkey and getting energy resources there, oil and gas. But Iran has become a barrier for Turkey's opening to Central Asia and Afghanistan rather than a facilitator in the last 3 decades. In that matter, when we look at the regional cooperation and involvement regional cooperation, we cannot say that the cooperation mode between Ankara and Tehran is not good at that level. But of course, Turkish-Iran relationship is still strong, despite some US sanctions taken by during the Trump administration. But Turkish-Pakistan political relationship and strategic relationship is very vibrant, and it is on the rise. And as you know, because of not only a strategic relationship between Beijing and Islamabad, but also with the help of the China-Pakistan economic corridor, there is an increasing political, economic, and strategic influence in Pakistan. In that matter, there is particularly for Pakistan, there is a desire to integrate Chinese and Turkey's network through Pakistan and developed an integration together with Central Asia, South Asia, and also West Asia, that means Middle East. So there are some strategic seeking that more trilateral cooperation between Ankara, Islamabad, and Beijing in that matter, in terms of Belt Road initiatives, in terms of strategic cooperations and others. But of course, we cannot say that there is a close logistic connection between Pakistan and Turkey. And when we look at the Turkey-Pakistan trade relationship and economic cooperation, it is far from being satisfactory. When we look at Turkey-India relationship, for example, India is the second largest trade partner, sometimes third, after China and South Korea, or after China, or some years together with South Korea. India is the second largest trade partner of Turkey. And in that matter, Turkey's integration to South Asia is not well integrated. And it is not clear how they can cooperate in that matter. It is not the South Asia, in the South Asian scene, Turkey is not very, there is very strong Turkey's economic and political influence. So Turkey is more main player after Russia and China, maybe third important player in Central Asia in that matter. I can say briefly for that.
Thank you, Professor, for highlighting some of these issues. Pansa, sir, if you have any questions or comments, may I request you to come in here.
There are many questions in the chat now.
Yes, certainly.
I'll just, okay, thank you very much. You can hear me, isn't it?
Yes, yes, sir, we can.
Hello. I think, as Ambassador Singh said, that is a very comprehensive subject to be discussed in one lecture. But sitting from India, I think we are very curious to know the kind of shift which is taking place in the political economy of Turkey from the preceding regime in there. Now, I would like to know from the professor that suppose 5 years down the line, he has to sketch the Turkey profile. Will it be moving more toward the Asian identity, or it will be a status quo kind of situation? Because as we all know that global economy and the dynamics is essentially moving toward the Asia. So that's one thing. Second question, which he said in a passing, but if you can elaborate it, that what is that bonding between Turkey and Pakistan? Because the economies are two different kind of setup. I don't find very strong strategic perception converging there. You see. And so therefore, I recall that there was a time when Islamabad and Turkey and Iran, they formed a kind of a regional cooperation council also. That's the time. But what are these complementarities in contemporary times? We would like to know, because there is a kind of haziness about positioning of Turkey in this part of the globe. If you can clarify it.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Professor, for your question. Of course, Asia is on the rise. So Asia has become a hub of, basically Asia Pacific has become hub of economic developments or political interests. Newly developed term, also the Indo-Pacific also important in that matter. And after after the dissolution of the Soviet Union and the end of the Cold War, Turkey has more interest to Asia. And basically starting with the 2000s, Turkey has more opening and interest to East Asia. For example, for last decade, Turkey opened many embassies in Asian countries. So there are only a few countries without Turkish embassies. And Turkey has also engaging strategy with Asian international institutions, organizations. For example, Shanghai Cooperation Organization, developed and led by China and Russia in the initial stage, and then India, Pakistan joined this organization. Turkey also has become a dialogue partner, not observer, and dialogue partner. And the membership of Turkey's SCO also is under question in Turkey as an alternative to the EU or sometimes NATO. But depending on the rising anti-West trend in Ankara, it is not dominant all the time, but also using a leverage the SCO as an alternative to the EU or NATO, basically to the EU. But when we look at the realities, the institutional developments and capacities are much more higher than, for both for EU and NATO, much more higher than the Shanghai Cooperation Organization in that matter. But interestingly, China was not supportive for Turkey's joining to the SCO from the beginning. Russia was supportive. After the decision to enlarging the organization rather than deepening after 2008 and 10, then China agreed to accept Turkey as a dialogue partner together with Azerbaijan, Armenia, and others, but also they are observer partners for that. So the Shanghai Cooperation Organization is very vibrant issue, but basically even the experts are discussing the Turkey's potential membership without enough knowledge and realities on the ground. The other interesting engagement of Turkey for Asian institutions with ASEAN. Turkey has become a sectoral dialogue partner of ASEAN in 2017, and also Ankara put a strategic target for a sectoral dialogue partnership, from sectoral dialogue partnership to sectoral partnership like China, South Korea and Japan, Australia and New Zealand. But when we analyze the level of relationship, of course, there was a steady increase for Turkey's Asian engagement, economically and politically. But economically, for last 5 years, there are some decreasing trends depending on Turkey's decreasing leverage. Regarding Turkey-China relations, maybe Turkey-India relations, also Turkey has interest to BRICS also. So President Erdogan joined the BRICS Johannesburg summit in 2019, and also offered Turkey's membership to the BRICS. But it is also overlapping issue because Turkey is a member of a middle power grouping, namely MICTA, consisted by Mexico, Indonesia, South Korea, and Australia. within the G20 as a balancing argument, was a balancing grouping against G7 and BRICS, G7 Western economies and BRICS economies also. In that matter, there is a confusion in Ankara. So then the Turkish leaders are eager to jump everything to involve. But when you look to perspectives and developments, Turkey, they have some limitations for Turkey's metallic capacity. And also there is an increasing capacity for economic policies for the last 5 years in that matter. When we look at Turkey-Pakistan relations, Turkey-Pakistan relations are always good from the beginning. And during the Cold War, Turkey supported Pakistan position basically in the Kashmir issue, and Pakistan supported the Cyprus position of Turkey. So there were some political supports, backings in that regard. But in the late period of the Cold War, after some dialogues between Turkish Prime Minister Turgut Özal and Indian Prime Minister Rajiv Gandhi, both Ankara and New Delhi decided to develop more political and economic cooperation between two countries. So Ankara fixed a balance. There was not much change. Turkey has more favorable position for Pakistan in the case of the Kashmir issue, but not directly. There was a policy not directly irritating New Delhi. But in the last 2 years, there is a changing position in Ankara. So the Turkish government has become more eager to jump the confrontational issues between Pakistan and India. So this is the new alternative. So then there is a pause button in that regard between Turkey and India, but the economic potential is there. But the new debate is that depending on the increasing political rivalry or competition between India and Pakistan, this is not new thing, but there is an increasing rivalry and competition between India and China, and also border disputes and the border clashes for last year. So also Turkey's position has become also important in this regional playground, basically in South Asia. So these are the new dynamics in the region. In terms of economy and politics, we will see what will happen in the coming months and years.
Thank you, Professor. May I request Professor Joseph Kechichian to ask his question?
There are also some written questions in
yes,
in the chat.
There are. So first we'll go to Professor Joseph Kechichian, and then we'll follow the other questions.
Thank you very much, Professor Çolakoğlu. I appreciate the presentation. I wanted to ask you about the Uyghurs, and I know that there is a previous question, but I am in the middle of a storm here, and my internet connection could be cut off any moment. So I will jump in and ask the question. My question is very simple. There is a problem with the Uyghurs between China and Turkey. Will Ankara be willing to accept a number of the Uyghurs to come and settle in Turkey? Just like, for example, there is a problem over the Rohingya now, and the Rohingya are trying to resettle from Myanmar. What is your thoughts on this, and whether anyone else is thinking about it? Thank you.
Thank you, Professor. Professor, if you don't mind, there were a couple of other questions on the same Uyghur question, so maybe we can take them together, if that is all right with you. So may I request Ms. Fatma bin Saik to ask her question?
Yes, hello everyone. Selçuk Hocam, çok memnun oldum. My name is Fatma. I work for the Canadian Embassy in Ankara. And so first of all, I would like to thank you for your book and for your presentation. My question relates to the question that was asked previously. And so basically, I was asking you if you could elaborate a little bit about the question of the Uyghurs, where Turkey seems to be a little bit in an uncomfortable situation right now, where on the one hand, it has to it has decided to rightfully to defend the Uyghurs and basically to appeal to the Muslim community, and so to continue to appeal to that part of the world. But at the same time, it relies heavily on economic relations with China, and even some even talk about a vaccine diplomacy with China. And so my question for you is, what is Ankara's position, and mostly what is Turkey's position, especially with an extradition treaty that has been in the talks for months now and even for years between Turkey and China? And basically related to the question that I would ask just before, in my own analysis, I see actually maybe a reticence to continue to accept the Uyghurs because of that treaty. And so I wanted to hear a little bit about you and to understand better the Turkish position. Thank you.
Thank you, Fatima. There was another question of somebody who has joined from Vietnam Embassy on the same issue. So if you're able to come on the mic, can you please ask your question?
Maybe we can go for these questions. So that,
yes,
of course,
okay, we can do that.
Uyghur issue is the main issue between Ankara and Beijing from the beginning. This is first identical. So when we look at the Uyghur issue, for Chinese official claim, the Uyghurs were settled in the Xinjiang region after, I can say, during the Chinese rule. So then they were nomads and they settled from somewhere else. They came from somewhere else. And the Uyghurs, according to official documents, Uyghurs are the slaves of the Turks or Turkic tribes. So this is the Chinese perspective. When we look at Turkish perspective, this is identical issue. So then this is a Turkic identical issue, and the official rhetoric of the Republic of Turkey, the Turks originate from Central Asia and basically from today's Xinjiang region and Western Mongolia. And the first written monuments in Western Mongolia and first written books and written documents are in Kashgar city in Xinjiang. So historically, the Turkish historians describe the Central Asia as Turkestan. That means the lands of Turk or Turkic people. So it is divided to Western and Eastern. Eastern is under control of China, and Western was under control of Russia and then Soviet Union. So Uyghurs are the old Turks and the first settlers of the Turkic tribes, and also represent the oldest Turkish or Turkic language to the old Turkish language. So then there is a respect to Uyghur culture and language here in Turkey. And the first Turkish Arabic book dictionary, Kashgarlı Mahmud or Mahmud Kashgari, and first Turkish political science book author, Yusuf Hasacip, lived in Kashgar. So their tombs also today are in Kashgar. So this is the identical issue. So if you defend the Uyghur cultural and heritage, that means the defending of Turkish culture and heritage. So this is the big difference between the perspectives of the Turkish and Chinese perspectives. And the Uyghur issue is the main pillar of Turkic identity or Turkishness in that matter. So any betrayal of the, I can say, interest of Uyghur for nationalist public here in Turkey, betrayal of the Turkey or Turkish identities. And the trouble for the current Turkish government consists by AKP, and it has become more political Islamist party in recent years, and Turkish nationalists, MHP. So that means the Turkish president, the leader of AKP at the same time, represent himself basically in recent years as a protector of all Muslims across the world, including the Rohingyas in Myanmar and others. This identical policy of AKP and Turkish president, and MHP is representing the Turkishness and Turkish nationalism, and ironically, so they need to cooperate for economic reasons and strategic reasons because of rising anti-West policies in the last 5 years. They need to cooperate with Beijing, but these identical issues also hit back to the AKP-MHP government here in Turkey. And opposition parties are very good at to use these arguments. So in that matter, this is the identical issue. And at the end of my whole research in the book, I don't know how Ankara and Beijing can handle this issue. But also there are some hot issues on the basket. Recently also professor asked about the Uyghur fighters in Syria, basically in Idlib. China accused the Turkish government of helping Uyghur fighters transfer from China through Southeast Asian countries to Syria. So this is an official claim of China or Chinese media, and accusing Turkey and Turkish government helping this trafficking from China to Syria for Uyghur fighters there. There were claims that there were around 5,000 Uyghur fighters in Syria and in Idlib area. Of course, it is very difficult to verify all these numbers, but this is the issue. This is the hot issue, and also there are some news that there are some intelligence or military experts, Chinese intelligence and military experts, cooperating with Damascus, the Assad regime, and also try to follow the Uyghur fighters in Syria, because the Chinese government has a fear that those fighters may come to China and also involve some terror attacks in the country. The other thing, there are three categories of Uyghurs in Turkey. One is the Turkish citizens, Uyghurs having Turkish citizenship since 1950. After the control of the communist regime of Xinjiang, the leading Uyghur figures moved, cooperating with the Chiang Kai-shek's nationalist regime, moved Turkey through India and Afghanistan and settled there. So then there are around 40,000 Uyghur origin Turkish citizens here in Turkey, but they are totally integrated into Turkish society. It is very difficult to identify who is Uyghur, who is others. So they can easily integrate, and they are very influential in the political networks, Turkish nationalist networks, Islamist networks, and other political, even the secular networks. So they are very influential in the Turkish society. So then the Uyghur issue is not only raised by the Uyghurs or Uyghur origin people. Uyghur issue is a national issue, national cause in Turkey in that matter. The second category of people, around maybe more than 15,000 people, having resident permit in Turkey, consists by students, university, college students, and business people. So these under surveillance of China because of some illegal, according to Chinese description, illegal activities in Turkey, or separatist or terrorist activities in Turkey. And there are also some 30 or 40,000 people without legal documents. So these are the irregular migrants here in Turkey, or we can call them asylum seekers. So roughly there are around 50,000 people. It might be subjected to extradition treaty if Turkey approved in the parliament. So regarding that issue, Turkey and China signed an extradition treaty in 2017. Then last December, China ratified this, but the Turkish government, despite my understanding, despite the consensus between Ankara and Beijing, the Turkish government cannot be sure to send to parliament for ratification. So then there is an increasing pressure from China, and also there are some claims in recent months and weeks also, China using the vaccine delivery because Turkish government made a deal for Sinovac to vaccination of people in Turkey, and there is no other alternative for Turkish people. So there are some delays for now. Turkey can get only available vaccinations to jab only above 65 people, so then ages of the 65, so that there is an expectation of 50 million doses for vaccination of others below 65. But there are still ongoing technical or political problems. We are not sure. And tomorrow, Chinese Foreign Minister will be in Ankara as a part of the regional tour to Middle East and Russia also. So this is also a hot issue. So then whether Turkey will ratify the extradition treaty in its parliament, and if Turkey ratifies, or Turkish parliament ratifies, there will be subjection of extradition of some Uyghurs living here currently legally or irregularly. So this is another hot issue. We don't know yet, but also for my understanding, through all my research for 25 years, not only for this book, but I'm following the Uyghur issue and Turkish-China relations 4 years. The understandings are very different from each other. So then Turkey is not only Muslim-dominant country, but Turkey is a leading Turkic country. This is a very identical issue, but Beijing is very sensitive for the Uyghur issue as in terms of separatism or terrorism issue. I don't know how can find a middle way to fix the issue in that matter, because China using the Uyghur issue, fixing the Uyghur issue is a precondition for further Chinese investments here in Turkey. Turkey or Turkish government desperately need for Chinese investment and financial flows for vibration of its economy. So then it is a very difficult, hard issue right now. So there are lots of questions without answers.
Thank you, Professor. This is certainly, as you can see from the chat box, this is one of the, quite interesting and important issue. Perhaps we can revisit, if time permits, we can revisit the question again. But let's move to other questions which are waiting. And may I now request Dr. Colin Dokop to ask his question. Sorry to keep you waiting. There were discussions going on, so.
No problem. Thank you very much, Selçuk Hocam, for this very, very interesting talk and really illuminating. I just have a question as to the Chinese investments in Turkey, the big projects like the nuclear plant, which is being, I think, planned for the Black Sea coast somewhere west of Istanbul. And I think China also trying to invest into Turkish ports. Would they use the same methods like in Sri Lanka and other countries? What is the current situation? Thank you so much, Hocam.
There are high expectations for Chinese investments here in Turkey, but basically after the declaration of the Belt Road initiatives. But before the Belt Road initiatives, there were two projects, two big tenders, the Chinese companies involved. One is the nuclear power plant, Sinop, the second nuclear power plant tender, Sinop nuclear power plant. And Chinese consortium was leading at the final stage. And then at the final stage, Turkey decided to deliver this Sinop nuclear power plant tender to Japanese French consortium in 2011 in 2012 and 13 in that matter. And this was a disappointment for Chinese side because there is a mistrust in Beijing, despite some very warm messages from Ankara to Beijing, and sometimes anti-West rhetoric. The Chinese perception of Turkey is a part of NATO, and at the end of the day, Turkey will act together with NATO's priorities in that matter. So then the delivery of the Sinop nuclear power plant tender from Chinese, I can say, consortium company to Japanese-French consortium was a disappointment. So afterwards, then something went wrong for Sinop nuclear power plant, and 2018, Japanese-French consortium withdrawn from the project because of the ballooning of the cost, a doubling of the cost from around $22 billion to $44 billion. But Turkish government offered the third nuclear power plant in western part of Istanbul in the Black Sea also coast. But so far, the Chinese side has no positive messages to Turkish side. So in that matter, this is on the table, but the Turkish side is more eager than Chinese side. The second big tender before the Russian missiles, Turkey was trying to buy Chinese missiles from 2013 to 2015. I was good at for remembering for that. Your organization, Konrad Adenauer Stiftung in Ankara, organized an Asian think tank conference in Istanbul. And at the same time, also Japanese Prime Minister also was in Istanbul for the further signing contracts for the Sinop nuclear power plant. At the same time, Turkish Prime Minister at the time, Erdogan, declared that Turkey will give priority for negotiations for air defense system to the Chinese company. So all these happenings also declared in September and October 2013, and after 2 years of negotiations, Turkey canceled these negotiations without pre-notification of the Chinese side, just before the President Xi Jinping attending to the G20 Antalya summit in November 2015 at this site, and there was a deep resentment for the Chinese side. For in terms of big tenders, we cannot see any big cooperation between Turkey and China yet, but for last 4 years, since the beginning of 2017 and late 2017, there are increasing number of the Chinese financial flow to Turkey, and 2 Chinese banks have operational rights since 2017. Bank of China and ICBC have banking operational rights here in Turkey, and there are around 4 to 5 billion Chinese financial flows and credits to Turkey provided by different Chinese financial banks and institutions in that matter. But when we look at the Turkey's economic size, 5 billion is not big enough for Ankara, for the Turkish government. What Turkish government expects from China, involvement big tenders like high-speed trains, it didn't happen. But basically the expectation for the Canal Istanbul, so booming economic projects for building another canal across the Bosphorus in Istanbul. This is also a big housing projects and construction projects, so booming the economy for the short run. And if China involves all these projects, then we can say that Chinese economy is more dominant, will be more dominant in Turkey. But so far, we cannot say that Turkey's economic dependency and the level of Chinese FDI or financial flow in Turkey is not at the dominant level. Still, Turkey's biggest economic partner is the European countries, the European Union and other European countries, Russia and maybe United States for defense industries and other economic issues. Turkish economy is still deeply dependent and oriented to Western economies in that matter. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor. we have already kind of extended our time a bit. With your permission, maybe we can take a couple of more questions. That will also give me a chance to ask some questions myself. So thank you. May I now request Professor Leora Hendelman to ask her question?
Yes, thank you very much for your presentation. Can you elaborate a little bit more about the cultural connections or more about the soft power strategies between Turkey and China? For example, do Turkish TV series have a market in China and vice versa? Or are there any Confucius Institutes operating in Turkey, and how many?
Mm-hmm. Thank you for the question. Yeah, this is another area of cooperation between Turkey and China. Depending on Chinese increasing economic influence and political influence, there is also increasing cultural influence across the world, including Turkey. There are 4 Confucius Institutes in Turkey, in Turkish universities, in campuses, 1 in Ankara, 3 in Istanbul. And also Chinese media here in Turkey is getting more active. They have resident offices here in Istanbul and Ankara, and reporters also. So the coverages on Turkey is on the rise, and also interestingly, there is one FM band broadcasting across the Turkey in Turkish by the China Radio International Turkish FM band. So this is another interesting thing. There is an increasing Chinese media influence in Turkey. But on the other, Turkey cannot open Yunus Emre Institute, the equivalent institute, the Confucius Institute, because of the Chinese government increasing suspicious position for foreign think tanks and cultural institutes in China. This is not only related to Turkey, but after timing, there will be maybe opening in Beijing or Shanghai, maybe both. But when we look at Turkey's influence in China, cultural influence in China, it is not very deep-rooted in that matter. For cultural perspective, also for economic perspective, Turkey is expecting more Chinese tourists from China. In 2019, there were almost 500,000 Chinese tourists from China, but Turkey hosted more than 40 million visitors in 2019. So 5 million Russians, 5 million Germans. So in that matters that the Chinese visitors here in Turkey is not enough. Of course, last year was an exception because of the pandemic. We don't know if there will be full normalization or going back to old normal again. But there are some cultural barriers also between Turkey and China. For example, if you talk about the Korean culture or Japanese culture, there is full of sympathy here in Turkey. But because of the Uyghur issue and economic issues, Chinese image is divided into positive and negative. Positive, considering China is an attractive economic business hub, but also negative because of the very high deficit of trade with China, and because of the Uyghur issue. So the Uyghur issue is feeding people again and again. And during the pandemic, because of in the initial stage of pandemic, so there are lots of news coverages shared in traditional media and also social media. This coronavirus stemmed from the bat soup. So then there is an image here in Turkey. The Chinese people are eating some strange things or something. So in that matter, Chinese culture is, yeah, there are positive and negative factors together. But we cannot say that Chinese culture is dominant as much as in, for example, Western European countries. So then Turkish people are somewhat far from the Chinese culture, and Chinese food also. Chinese food are not preferred food here in Turkey. You can hardly find Chinese restaurants, not very common in that sense. But China, if China invests, for example, media sector more, they will have more leverage, because now Chinese made in trouble, so they have become more pro-government, but people want to read and listen more critical things. So then, so in that matter, big Turkish media companies are in trouble if China invests more. So then they will have more leverages. But the Chinese influence in the beginning in Turkey, there is of course increasing influence and investments here in Turkey for last 5 years basically. But the Chinese influence is not at that level in some Asian countries or some European countries. So there are still a very long way to China.
Thank you, Professor. Before we close, maybe I would like to ask 2 very quick questions. One is the point about the Chinese debt diplomacy, the debt trap diplomacy, as Dr. Dokop was also pointing towards. I mean, what are the apprehensions? Are there any apprehensions within Turkey in terms of growing Chinese investments, both within Turkey and in the neighborhood areas? I mean, how do Turkey looks at this issue? The second question is, we have seen in recent years, and especially after the COVID-19 pandemic, growing anti-China sentiments, and it's a global phenomenon. There is also the China-US tensions over various issues. So the focus is currently in the Indo-Pacific, but as far as I understand, Middle East cannot remain completely out of that, growing China-US tensions. And if some progress, I mean, if there is, if it increases the tensions in the Middle East, Turkey cannot remain completely out of that, given its triangular kind of a relationship between the 2 countries. So how do you anticipate, that situation evolving as far as, or challenging as far as Turkey-China relations? Thank you.
Yeah, this is a good point. First of all, yeah, there are some conflicting messages from Ankara, for example, for pro-China or anti-China. Of course, in last 5 years, there is an increasing anti-West tendency and Eurasianism here in Turkey. But this does not mean that China considers Turkey as an potential ally in that matter. There are also many differences between Ankara and Beijing. So basically, the Ankara wants to use Beijing and Moscow as a leverage for its bargaining with Western capitals. But on the other hand, for example, after the I can say US elections, and the Biden administration has started sitting in their office, the pro-government Turkish American Business Council offered Biden administration, sent a letter to Secretary Blinken to cooperate, to develop a cooperation, Turkish American cooperation against China. So there are many conflicting messages in that regard. So it is difficult to analyze the Ankara's final position. But when regarding the business cooperation and that trap issue, so of course China delivered around 5 billion loans to Turkey for infrastructure developments here in Turkey, but the amount is not very high. So then Turkey is not economically dependent or over-dependent to China yet. The other difficulty between Turkish-Chinese economic cooperation is a different mindset. Despite all problems, the Turkish business mindset is very close to European or Western mindset. So, and Turkey is a somewhat developed country. Turkey is not any underdeveloped countries in some part of Asia or Africa. Turkey has infrastructure and alternatives, developed labor force and other things. So what Turkey needs for economic boom, capital, foreign direct investment and financial flows, and technology transfer, tech transfer to Turkish companies or related sectors. But when we look at the Chinese model, economic model in Asia and Africa, if if they involve, they take all. They send workers, and there is no, I can say, transfer, real money transfer to those countries, and they employ basically Chinese workers or engineers, labor force, and there is no enough level of cooperation with the Turkish business in that regard. For example, Turkey was expecting to deliver the high-speed trains in Turkey to Chinese consortium since 2009. So since at the former President Abdullah Gül visited China, it was on the agenda, but it didn't happen. But instead, Turkey signed a 40 billion contract with German Siemens for modernization of the Turkey's rail network. If you look at for example, Turkish-German or Turkish-Italian, British or French cooperation, so the European companies bring their capitals here in Turkey and also bring their technologies and employ Turkish labor force and sharing the benefits, together. So there are many examples, successful examples for that. But for Chinese side, so they couldn't build up a joint, a business mentality, Turkish business mentality to cooperate in that matter. We couldn't see very successful examples in recent years. This is another challenge or difficulty for further Turkish-Chinese economic cooperations. So there is a concern also in Turkey building an over-dependency to Chinese economy in that matter. As a sign for that, for example, for the first Silk Road Forum in Beijing in 2017, Turkey participated very huge delegation together with Turkish president and maybe 5 more ministers. So there was very high level participation for the first Silk Road Forum in 2017. But 2 years later, in 2019, so for the second Silk Road Forum in Beijing, there was no high-level participation. Even a single minister didn't participate for the second Silk Road Forum because of those concerns. So then there are ups and downs. Of course, there's a steady increase year by year, but the expected level cannot be met so far.
Professor Çolakoglu, for introducing your book to us. And as you have seen, you have evoked a lot of interest in the subject. It's a very interesting book. I have read half of it, and I expect to finish it soon. Also, for those who are interested in not necessarily interested in Turkey, China, but Turkey, India, Pakistan triangle kind of a relationship. There are some very interesting historical references in the book. If you are interested in that, even for those, the book would be very interesting read. So thanks a lot, Professor. May I now request Sir Professor Coomaraswamy to take over and say the closing remarks.
Thank you.